So we're going to bring on our first guest. Her name is Rachel Jameson Webster. And she came to our attention because she has a book titled Benjamin Banneker and Us 11 Generations of an American Family. And we haven't discussed Benjamin Banneker. We've discussed a lot of people in history on this show, but not Benjamin Banneker. So I thought it would be a great discussion. And welcome to Black Authors Matter TV, Rachel.
Thank you, Gwen. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rhonda, for having me. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you both.
Well, we're glad to have you here. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah.
So you are a history professor, is that correct?
Well, I'm actually an English professor
Oh,
who
okay.
loves history.
Okay. Okay. So you're able to combine the two. And how did
Mhm.
Benjamin Banneker, as a subject of a book, what made that uh, come to your mind, in the forefront of your mind, to say, I want to write a book about Benjamin Banneker?
Well, I think we all have books as writers that we know we have to write. This one actually came as a surprise and a gift to me. So it was 2016, and it was the heightened election season of 2016. And I was very disturbed by the polarization of the country at that time and the conversation and this rise of a white nationalist point of view that I thought we had moved to the side and done away with a little more. Right around that time, I was at a family reunion and talking about the other issue of who gets to tell what story, which I think is a really important issue that I'll come back to.
Mhm.
And my cousin Nathan said, well, it's especially interesting given how mixed Americans really are and how many of us have multiracial ancestry, including us. And I thought, oh, okay, what do you mean? Well, we had always known we'd been in the country for a really long time as a family, since before the revolution. And we had always said that we had a strand of Native American ancestry. But it turns out that we had generations of African American ancestry. And my cousin, another cousin, had just found a strand of the family that hadn't been researched that were incredible ancestors. So some of them have moved up into Ohio and argued for the freedom of their children in the 1830s. And they went all the way back to Benjamin Banneker.
Wow.
And so it
Hmm.
was fascinating. And because Benjamin Banneker was renowned in his lifetime as an intellectual and who helped to survey Washington, D.C. as an African
Mhm.
American man. And he published almanacs and he corresponded really bravely with Thomas Jefferson. Because all of that, someone had taken the time to record his ancestry. So we could go all the way back to the 1680s to a Senegalese man, his grandfather, Banaka, and his grandmother, Molly, who was a convict servant from England. So I was fascinated, as you can
I can see
imagine.
why. Yes.
Rhonda, you've written many books, so you know the feeling where you're like, oh, I have to write about this.
Yes.
Yes. But I grew up not knowing about my Black ancestry. So I had a real question of how can I do this ethically? How can I tell this story? Because this is not my cultural history, and he's an important cultural figure for Black people in this country. And I had never even learned about him.
That's interesting. So
Hmm.
you had prior to this, you never had an idea of who Benjamin Banneker was.
No.
So
Hmm.
so you've dug into your past, you've done all of this research, and you find out not only do you have African American ancestry, but such an important figure in not just Black history, but American history.
History, exactly. An amazing figure in history. So, of course, I wanted to share his story more widely because I do find Black audiences usually know who he was. And a lot of times outside of those communities, people haven't heard of him, unfortunately. And I feel like he should be as famous as Benjamin Franklin for sure. I mean, he was just a brilliant thinker, and writer and scientist. So yes, I found out about this. I started doing all the research and I didn't feel shocked. The ancestors felt I actually was afraid to write the chapters about him because he felt so great, capital G. But in general, it felt like an alignment, like, oh, this makes sense. It felt familiar to me to be writing their stories. But so I published a tiny essay called White Lies and Fiction, which was basically saying my family knew that we were Americans, but we denied African American genius in our origin story. And this is what's happened in the larger country, to this
That's
denial. And 2 years after it came out, my cousin Edie found this article and got in touch. Edie is a Black woman, a lawyer, a gifted genealogist. And she said, we need to talk about our family.
now, did you know Edie prior to this moment?
No, so
Wow.
Wow.
it was a wow
It
moment. I
was,
mean, when she said that, I just started crying, and she and I both felt like we knew each other. I mean, we call each other sister cousins because there was this resonance between us. It was beautiful. And she had done 40 years of research into the family. And she was kind of like, oh, good, you're a writer. Now you're here. Here you go. So the book became this collective, collaborative experience with Edie Lee Harris, Robert Lett, our cousin, who is also an incredible family historian, but again, a U.S. historian of the family, and then Gwen Marable, who helped to create the Banneker Park and Museum. So they shared their research. We talked about the ancestors, and the book is written so it's every other chapter. It's a chapter about the past, the ancestors, and then it's a chapter that's in the present as a conversation.
oh, wow. You are correct that Benjamin Banneker is known within Black communities. He's one of the people that we learn about, like in elementary school, when we're learning Black history. He's not as uh, famous or popular as Rosa Parks or Martin Luther King, but he's right in there.
Mhm,
And people really don't know that much about him other than, the factoid about him
mhm, mhm,
designing the streets in Washington, D.C.
mhm,
Um, but he's a name that people have heard in our communities. So I don't know if they're really teaching it now, but I know growing up in the
mhm.
past, Black history courses taught about him at the elementary school level. That's
Well,
when I
And
learned about him when I was in
I
elementary
have
school.
to admit that growing up, I it's not that we had a whole lot of lessons on Benjamin Banneker. However, because there were schools named after him, I wanted to know who Benjamin Banneker was. That was the first time I had heard his name because there were schools
Okay.
named after him.
mhm,
Okay.
So I started to research him, and then that's when I found out about his connection to DC and
mhm.
so forth. But I say all of that to say this is why representation is so important. And this is, I truly believe this is why so many schools, especially in the African American community, should be named after certain figures
Yes,
because that's
yes.
who I found out who Phyllis Wheatley was
Mhm,
because I went to Phyllis Wheatley Elementary School. I wanted to know who these people
Mhm.
were. That
mhm.
if I'm going to a school that's named after somebody, and I
Right.
just thought it was cool because Phyllis Wheatley had the same name as my mom. My mom's name is Phyllis, so that was that was my first lesson on her. But then as I got to read and recognize these names, and I started to learn more about them, that's when those names started to mean more to me. So I hope that we continue to name schools
I
after these important
agree.
figures.
I agree. And there are so many schools named after Banneker, and the Banneker High School in DC is such an inspiring place. I was there with my cousins last year, and they did a whole program honoring him. And he was a real Renaissance man. He was a scientist. He built a clock as a young man, one of the only clocks in the region. And
Right.
he also wrote poetry. He recorded his dreams in his journal. He was just a really thoughtful person, and he was really inspired by nature. So he loved sitting outside and observing nature and getting insights that way. And one thing that I thought was so special, because he was famous in his lifetime, we had a Quaker woman who was the daughter of his best friend, took the time to interview the family. And so we have stories and names for his family. And so I wanted to write the book also telling the stories of the women. So his mother, Mary Banneker, was a really brave woman in her own right. She was indentured until she was in her 30s just for being multiracial. So they were putting slavery in place in law through women and children. And as soon as she got out, she went to the provincial court to argue against the indenture laws for children to get her children free. And this
Wow.
was a
Oh,
document that surfaced while we were working on the book together. So there were some magical things that really made me feel that the ancestors are close and that they lived through very intense chapters in history like we are now, but they had a way of surviving creatively that was just incredible. So it was fun. It was amazing to see those documents and to go back through the generations and learn about the family.
so Benjamin Banneker was never a slave.
No, he was the son of a land-owning free people of color. He
Okay.
is written down in what we think was his grandmother's will. And this is another fact that Black folks know. It's news to a lot of other people, but sometimes people would put in writing family members if some of the family members were free and some were not.
Mm,
So it does get a little foggy in places, but his grandmother, Molly, who was the indentured servant, actually left him silver. They had 100 acres of land as a family, and they were next to Quakers. So they had a level of freedom that was very unusual for that time and then for the time that would come. So his father, Robert, was a really brilliant man who had befriended a prominent Quaker, and I think that's how he ended up with that land.
Okay. Yeah, and a lot of people, for those who don't know, the Quakers, they were against slavery and they were very instrumental in freeing slaves as far as the Underground Railroad and just being active in the abolition movement.
Mhm.
that's interesting. That's something I don't think I knew. So you taught me something
You
tonight,
didn't know
Glenn.
about the
Oh.
Quakers? Yeah, they,
I mean, I knew who the Quakers were, but I
well,
don't think
with
I.
slavery, yeah, they were
That's what I'm
not.
saying. I did not
Yeah.
know their relationship with slavery. I didn't know that.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. It's been depicted in some books. You know, the movie, well, there weren't any real black people in that movie, but no, that was the Amish. I'm getting the Amish and the Quakers mixed up.
Yeah, they're both pretty countercultural. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were both counterculture groups that were very small, and they kind of lived away from others. They lived
Hmm.
separately. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, the Quakers were. I don't think the Amish were involved in abolition, but the Quakers were for certain. They were
Hmm.
very active with the Underground Railroad. So,
Mhm.
and that took a really certain level of bravery because when people were searching for slaves or free runaway slaves, they didn't care who was protecting them. They would kill whoever was involved. So that took, that took some courage to go against the grain and do.
Hmm.
Right.
Hmm.
Rachel, do you live in DC now?
No, I live in Chicago area, north of Chicago. I teach at
Okay.
Northwestern. Are you in New Orleans?
No, I'm from New Orleans, but
Oh,
I live in
okay.
the DC area. That's
You're
why
in
I
DC.
Really?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So you
Yeah.
have Banneker all over.
asked.
Yeah.
All over.
He's I always think about him being there and helping to survey that city. And his job was to be up on the highest hill and work the telescope, which was the most advanced technology of that time. And his job was to stay up all night looking through the telescope to make the equations that would then map out the city. And he did that when he was 60 years old. So he was
Wow.
also, and back then that would be,
Yeah,
even
like 80
older.
now, like 80 now.
Probably,
Because the
right.
life expectancy was much shorter
Mm-hmm.
back
Right.
then.
So he had this irrepressible curiosity and this desire to create and be part of the public conversation. And I think the pain of knowing that here we were creating a city on a hill devoted to freedom. And he was the first Black person paid by the federal government for something. So that's something. He was paid for his
Oh.
time, $2 a day to do the survey. But he knew that they were going to bring in enslaved people to help build these buildings and streets. And so
Mhm.
just that being in that position in history and seeing the country make the wrong decision around perpetuating enslavement, I think that was really devastating. And he continued to create, he continued to do what he could.
Now, I wonder, as I was listening to you tell your story, I'm wondering where did the disconnect happen?
Mm,
Why so many people later on had no idea about not even just Benjamin Banneker, but even having African American
mhm,
heritage.
mhm.
I just wonder where did that fall? Was it a case of people lying, or was it a case of people
Passing,
just not know? Yeah, or maybe passing on and
yeah,
not,
passing.
Passing.
It was a whole group of siblings. So,
oh, passing, not passing on, but you mean passing
No,
as in,
passing. She said,
passing as
yeah,
white and hiding
yeah.
yes.
the African ancestry.
Hmm.
So there's a group, we know where it happened. It was a ancestor named Peter Lett, and he left the Lett homestead were a group of descendants that went up into Ohio. And they had a whole group of allied families who were these multiracial and African American families who were farming together, helping each other, and they were arguing for their kids' right to an education. So they were kind of activist families on the frontier saying we deserve this too. And incidentally, the schoolhouse, they won the case to have the schoolhouse on their property, but then townspeople burn it down 3 times. So there were
Mm.
those acts of terrorism, right? For people becoming prominent or becoming outspoken, racialized terrorism. Well, our ancestor Peter left that group and went north. And we think he was working with John Brown, again, an abolitionist, because he went and worked for John Brown's tannery, where they were getting people across the Great Lakes
Mhm.
from Ohio. And this is where my family still is. I grew up in northeastern Ohio. And so they were getting people on boats to get into Canada. And some of the cousins show up. They show up in Ohio. They show up across the lake in Canada. They were moving something. So there's some documentation of this. And then Peter was a laborer at this tannery. His children, and this is now around Civil War time, they all moved to the county where my family still lives. So it wasn't a case of like one person passing and losing their family, which is often the story of passing. This was a whole group of them who moved together. And they sort of sent one of them to the courthouse to declare that all of them were entirely white. So we
Mm.
always laugh that they sent like the palest one because in every family there's a range.
I can imagine.
And
Yeah.
right. So they were passing over to this other set of rights and privileges. And the sad part is you lose your family. They never went back and saw their dad. He never came back to the Let homestead. Um, you lose your full history. So,
Right.
um, but even my cousins who are Black, who also share this ancestry, that only one of them had the continuity of knowing the story. The others also had to find it because of various twists and turns in survival. People lost this thread.
Mm.
Wow.
Oh, do you have a copy of your book? I meant to ask you that at the
Yeah,
beginning so we
yeah.
can see what the cover looks like.
Oh,
Oh,
the
nice.
cover too. So this is Edie's mother as a little girl.
Oh,
These are our real
okay.
ancestors. This is Gwen, who's 90 years old in the book, and she's like one of my dearest cousin friends. She's amazing. So she's in the book. This is her grandfather. This is a drawing of Benjamin, and these are depictions of maybe Molly. I don't know. She was a working girl, and maybe Banaka. But we wanted to
Okay.
have some of the real ancestors there. And then there's pictures inside of the cousins and some of our reunions that we've had on the land.
I was just going to
Hmm.
ask you what was that first reunion like? I mean, with the families coming together.
It was beautiful. It was very, very moving. It was weird. I wrote the book during COVID, and so it actually took a while before we could get together in person.
Mhm.
So we would have these weekly or every other week Zoom calls. But in some ways, that just like this, that made even more possible in some ways.
Right.
Like
You
we
kind
were
of felt
able
like
to
you
be
knew
in
each other by the time
conversation.
you came together.
We did. I mean, Edie, it was like she got off the train and we were staying together in Baltimore. And it was like, oh, there she is. We knew each other. And it was beautiful and fun. It was like joyful to be together in person. And then we also did some research together when we got together because I wanted her to go with me to interpret the documents. Um,
Right.
the book was only possible because it became this collective experience in the end. And so we were able to see those documents of Mary arguing for her children's freedom in court, and it was just amazing.
Mm. So you were able to trace 11 generations from Benjamin Banneker or before Benjamin Banneker to now. Is that
Yeah, his to
okay?
his
His
grandparents,
grandmother?
to
Okay.
my daughter.
Oh, okay. 11. Wow, 11 generations. That's
And my
amazing.
niece. Yeah. Because I took them on a road trip as soon as I learned about it. Before I even knew I would write a book, I just knew I really wanted to get to know these stories. I took them, they were in fourth grade, which is when you learn a lot of this history, but I still felt I wanted to make sure they weren't just learning white or military history. I wanted to learn some other history. So we did the Great Migration in reverse, and we saw where the ancestors had come to Ohio, and then we went down to the Banneker land, which is amazing because it's still preserved. It's a park and museum in Owella, Maryland, so outside
Oh,
of Baltimore.
Yeah, I've
oh,
heard
it's
of it.
close to
I've
you,
never been
Veronica.
there. Yeah, I've heard of it. I just have not
Okay.
been there, but I would love to visit. And so now that you've mentioned it, it's in my head now.
Yeah, it's
So
only
I
a
will be
couple
visiting.
hours from you, right?
Well, I live in the sticks. I live in I
Oh,
live
nice.
in Keek, Maryland. And you probably haven't
Oh,
even.
okay. So you're probably not that far from it, from Ellicott City area.
No, I'm quite far.
Oh,
I'm closer to DC. I'm in like Southern Maryland.
oh, okay.
Yeah, but
Mhm.
I mean, there's nothing but a drive. I can do it.
Yeah, it's pretty down there.
Yeah. So we only have a few minutes left. What have been your experience with promoting the book and presenting it to people? Is it being used as a for college courses, or is it more of a trade book? Um,
Hmm.
so
Good
tell us a little bit
question.
about that.
Yeah, I don't think it's been adopted for any courses. I would love if it would be, of course. It's been more positioned as a trade book.
Mhm.
Sharing it and promoting it has been wonderful because I've gotten to meet so many people. I've been in different conversations. I've been in conversations with historians, and there's a lot of people out there who want to write their own family history. So it's a good model for that. And I've just really loved it. You know, writing is so solitary. And
Yeah.
this book was
It
such a
is.
gift because it was much less solitary than usual because my cousins and I collaborated. And at first I was nervous to share it because I was more of an introverted writer. And then I realized, oh, the sharing it is its own creative process. And it's just been wonderful to meet people through the book. And it's been out for a couple years. So I want to thank you for getting in touch. It feels really good to have invitations to keep telling the stories about Benjamin Banneker, but all the ancestors too. It's really wonderful.
Well, it came across our radar somehow recently, so it's still making the rounds in the
Yes.
literary world. And again, we've never discussed Benjamin Banneker on the show. We've never had anybody have a book with, him as the subject. So
Right.
this was something different for us to learn about. And I learned some new things for sure. Um, and I'm sure our audience did as well. And Rhonda learned about the Quakers.
Yeah.
So, Rachel, thank you so much for being a guest on the show, and
Thank
congratulations
you.
on the research and finding your family and putting all that together. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to meet you, and congrats to both of you on all you're creating with this series and the conference too. It's really exciting.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the kind words. And we look forward to continuing to stay in touch and seeing how things go with the book.
Thank you. That sounds great. Okay.
Okay, have a great night.
You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.